Over the past couple seasons, Mike Grier and the Sharks have built up a prospect pool that can be envied by most the NHL. How good is it actually?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker of the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And today we're going to kind of dig into the prospect pool and see how good it actually is. So the first segment here is actually going to be our good friend Sebastian High from NHL Prospects, and also one half of the Locked On NHL Prospects host, where he's going to discuss these Sharks prospects kind of pool at large and kind of give his thoughts of it. And then we're going to talk about kind of the areas of strength for the pool, and then the areas I think that they still need to kind of target here as they continue their rebuild. So before we get into all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Alrighty, let's keep this going here with the prospect pool breakdown. And the San Jose Sharks are spoiled for riches in this part here. Beyond just adding the players that we just discussed in the last segment, they already have a real wealth of prospects that they've accumulated in the past couple seasons. Whether it be a player that doesn't quite qualify for this in William Eklund, who took a massive step for San Jose last season, or Will Smith, who will be making his NHL debuts alongside Macklin Celebrini this fall and adding a ton of skill. Beyond just those players, there's a bunch of depth and a lot of skill as well in the perhaps slightly below A-level prospects. It could be Quentin Musty, a 6'3" high skill player who has a wicked shot, really good playmaker, and really silky mitts, who has been a dominant forward in the OHL for the Sudbury Wolves for a couple seasons now, and could really be a top 6 contributor long-term in San Jose. He might need a couple more years to develop and iron out some of the decision-making woes in his game and some of the immaturity in his habits. But if he hits his upside, this is a fantastic and really entertaining player. Beyond him, in the forward pool, you still have Philip Bistad, who didn't quite pop off quite as much this past season as the year before, but has made the switch to North America, and he looked really good in the AHL minutes that he did see. Daniil Gushchin can still make his big leap to the NHL this upcoming season with all the skill he brings to the table, the gorgeous goals he can score. He's able to pick corners from far out and has really nice combination of mobility, speed, and handling ability. The pace of offensive play with this player is one of the reasons that he's been a favorite of mine for almost a handful of years at this stage. You also have a complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of forward, a guy like David Edstrom, who was acquired in the Thomas Hertl deal, who was a first-round selection by the Las Vegas Golden Knights last year. And while he doesn't really have the same top 6 upside that other players in this pool do, he doesn't need to. Celebrini, Smith, Eklund, Musty, there's a lot of these high-end forwards that are going to slot into top 6 roles long-term, which is going to allow Edstrom to be a bottom 6 presence and a real solidifying force down the middle. A solid two-way center who plays with physicality and grit, who makes smart reads in all 3 zones, gets to the dangerous areas offensively as a net front presence, and can really lock things down defensively. Beyond him, you still have a guy like Kasper Halttunen as well, who's worth a mention, who played a really solid season with the London Knights this past year, playing a middle 6 role on the wing, on their road to an OHL championship and a Memorial Cup run where they ended up losing out to the Saginaw Spirit, but really put in a good fight. And Halton has a wicked shot. He was able to round out his game a little bit this past season, and he could also be a middle 6 scoring winger for San Jose. And obviously, Igor Chernyshov, Celebrini, goes without saying, also very exciting pieces there at forward long term. on the defensive side of things, the selection of Sam Dickinson really, really helps the outlook of the defensive prospect pool. They had been missing a player that could project as a clear top pairing guy long term, and I think that he brings a lot of what they're going to value: a two-way impact, a true two-way impact, with physicality and aggression and really offensive potential as well. That's been underrated over the course of the last year, but the defensive ability, the transition defending are clear areas of strength in his game as well. And there's so much to like in his overall NHL projection. I was talking with quite a few scouts at the NHL draft who had Dickinson as their top ranked defenseman available, period, on draft day, having him ranked as high as 3rd overall. So this is a player who has a lot of really big proponents in the scouting community, and I'm quite certain that San Jose was elated to have him available where they picked there at 11th overall. But you also have Shakir Mukhamadullin, who seems to finally be taking the big leap into a top 4 NHL role this upcoming season, having been utilized very carefully in his development in San Jose since being acquired in the Timo Meier trade with the New Jersey Devils. And he was playing big minutes in the AHL all season long and played a couple NHL games where he also logged big minutes. But this is going to be the year where the massive defenseman might make the big step into that top 4 range. But beyond those big defensemen, you also have a variety of undersized, intelligent, skilled players in that defensive pool as well. The favorite among those, in my opinion, is Luca Cagnoni, who was a 4th or 5th round selection in last year's draft and took a massive step this past season in the WHL. This is a highly intelligent player who is a bit undersized, not an elite level skater, but he uses his intelligence to solve problems. He's a very effective defenseman in closing his gaps. He's able to cover a surprisingly wide range in the defensive zone, whether it be on the cycle or against the rush. And his intelligence really translates offensively into high-end playmaking ability. Combining him at 5-on-5 offense with guys like Celebrini and Smith and Musty and Eklund and Chernyshov is going to be incredibly exciting long-term. And especially having now acquired Sam Dickinson, being able to insulate Cagnoni into a bit more of a middle pairing role long term is really going to serve his development. A couple other defensemen that deserve shout outs are Leo Salim Belenius, who we covered in the last segment, Henry Thrun, who could be making another step this upcoming season to a consistent NHL role, and Matthias Havelet, who continues to be chugging away in his development over in Sweden, who is a really intelligent defenseman with a booming shot, decent handling and mobility, and improving playmaking and defensive abilities as well. So a lot to like on the defensive side of things, but they are still missing a projected number 1 right shot defenseman, in my opinion, to really complete their prospect pool. And in goal, they added Kirsch and Korostelyov to Magnus Krona, who is progressing quite nicely for the Sharks, but we're going to see if he's at the level to be a projected starting goaltender in the NHL. And yeah, so I would say that this is overall an A-plus prospect pool. They have the elite level skill, they have projectable talent, they have a bunch of soft skill and dynamism, they have physicality and aggression. They have players for a variety of roles, and I think that this group of players is going to mature into a contending lineup in the NHL in about 3 to 5 years' time, and I'm really excited to see how that continues. What in terms of players that they might still want to add into their prospect pool, and they're going to have one more year at least of being close to the NHL basement and with high-end draft picks to kind of round out that prospect pool. I'd be looking at adding a big potential first pairing right shot defenseman as a clear area of need, as well as as a hopeful starting goaltender. And clearly San Jose believes that Kirsch and Korostelyov can kind of fulfill those roles, as they were the 2 top goaltenders that they had ranked in this past draft class. I still have a few questions around that, but if they're confident with that, with their goalie pool at this stage, then they're even more confident in their overall pool than I am, and I'm giving them an A+ rating. So a lot to look forward to in San Jose.
All right, before we continue and we look at where the prospect pool needs to get some help and where the prospect pools, I think, is at its strength, just need to take a quick break. if you're looking to go catch a baseball game, or maybe you want to go catch a summer concert, or whatever it is you need to get tickets for, you need to check out Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have killer last minute deals, all in pricing, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They have last minute deals. You can save up to 60% off by buying last minute for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, or whatever you want to go to. You even have, with their flash deals, they have exclusive in-app deals or in select seats ahead, and they have the lowest price guarantee. So if you find a price that in the same section and row for cheaper, they'll credit you for 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. So Sebastian kind of talked about it, right? And I think the picking an area of strength is pretty easy for the Sharks prospect pool, right? And it is the forward group. And I know Eklund is, in my eyes, he's kind of graduated as a prospect, but he's still considered like a franchise piece that you're going to be building. And when you talk about kind of the totality of the prospect pool, I think you have to include him in there. Even though I think he's graduated from that prospect, but he's still he'll be 22 here by the time the season starts. But looking at you have that blue chip like franchise changing player in Macklin Celebrini. You have high end pieces in Will Smith and William Eklund, both top 10 picks in their draft years. You have guys like Quentin Musty, who has top 6 upside, Casper Holtonen, who has insane upside as well. There's some questions there for him and his game. And then you have, guys like Phil Beested and David Edstrom, which are going to kind of fill in those middle 6, bottom 6 type of roles, but still provide, I think, be excellent in what they do, right? Then you guys have like Daniel Gushin, and then players like Thomas Bordeleau. Like there's still this group of forwards. I think you can kind of up and down like put it with just about anybody's prospect pool in the league, right? I think the Ducks kind of doing this last week was it earlier this week when I did the kind of like Will Smith and Celebrini versus everybody. I think the Ducks is the other prospect pool that you can kind of, or like really try to look at and see how can we match this, especially as a division rival. And I think the Sharks can now, especially with the addition of Celebrini, kind of go like blow for blow with the Ducks. And that's what you're going to have to do as these two powers start to kind of exit their rebuilds and start to become, hopefully, especially in the Sharks case, hopefully kind of take that step into being, the fun and frisky team, and then eventually the contender that we hope and expect the Sharks to be someday. But, you have to kind of keep an eye at what your division is doing and what your rivals are doing. And I think with the Ducks, right, you look at Leo Carlson, you look at Mason McTavish, whatever, if Trevor Zegras 6th rounder goes, Cutter Gauthier, like their forward group is just as deep and just as dynamic as what the Sharks have put together here. And they have a little bit more on the back end. We'll talk about the back end here in a little bit, but I think for the Sharks building through, this forward group, they always say, right, you have to win down the middle. And if you can run out Celebrini, Will Smith, Beested, and Edstrom eventually as you're down the middle, though that is 4 first-round picks that you could be eventually running down the middle of your lineup here. And yes, I mean some of these, homegrown talents, some of them that, you acquired as part of your rebuild process and, making smart trades and right, and kind of realizing where this franchise was headed and what it needed to do, and making tough decisions with trading guys like Tomas Hertl, or trading back from a number 11 because you don't really like the guys who were there. Right. I mean, Mike Grier has done you have to, I know a lot of people were very skeptical about Mike Grier and the job he would do coming into San Jose, but I mean, he has a plan and he's been sticking to the plan and he has a type, right? The Sharks are they've gotten much bigger, much more aggressive, and much more skilled since Mike Grier got here, right? Kind of looking back at that 2020 class, we're very excited, and there's still a lot of promise, I think, with guys like Gushin and Robbins and, Bordeleau. I know there's some question marks about him going into this season, but, like what Grier has done to kind of add, and those guys who are all small guys, with the exception of Brandon Coe, who's kind of not really been able to find his game consistently. But what Grier's done in adding guys like Quentin Musty, who's 6'2", right, and 200 pounds, Casper Halton, who's 6'2", 200 pounds, David Edstrom, Philip Beestead, and then the four group, but then also not shying away from guys who might be a little bit smaller, and Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini, who are both 6 foot, right? But just supremely skilled, like supremely skilled players. So I think there's a nice blend of what the Sharks have done here. And I've never been the Sharks need to get bigger type of guy. I just want good players. And if you can get good players who are also big, that helps, but just get good players. And Mike Grier, I think, has done that. And it's just been very painful at times watching, some of your favorite players get traded away, and Erik Karlsson or Brent Burns or Tomas Hertl or, whomever, Timo Meyer, losing some of these guys who were part of that previous core. But it was they were the right decisions, and you can, decide if maybe he got enough or didn't get enough for his process of getting there. But right now you have to look at this forward group and think this is one of the best forward prospect groups that are in the NHL right now. And if not all these guys are going to hit, right, and some of them aren't going to hit, maybe get up to their expectations, but if they do, and some of the guys hit, and maybe some guys exceed expectations, and like a guy like Igor Chernyshev, who the Sharks got in the second round, and maybe he comes in with a chip on his shoulder of going, he said it himself, he's disappointed for going in the second round. Like, there's a lot to be excited about with this Sharks prospect group. And that doesn't mean, as we'll talk about the defense here in a little bit, that I think the forward group is done. I still very much, you just pick the best player available, especially if the Sharks are picking top 5 again next year, as we kind of expect them to be one of those teams picking in the top 5. And if the best player is a defenseman, then you just pick defenseman. If the best player is a forward available, then you just pick a forward. You try to figure things out later, but you have to be super excited about the direction of this forward group and what Mike Grier has kind of been able to do in such a short amount of time, right? And it feels much longer, because if you kind of think about with the Sharks, right, it was after that 2019 run, losing to the Blues, and then you kind of was like, okay, maybe it's just a step back year, and then things kind of like Doug Wilson was trying to just kind of hold on and kind of put some Band-Aids on it before Mike Grier got here, and finally just decided like this thing needs to get torn down to the bare bones and rebuilt. So it feels much longer because of, I don't want to say wasted years, but kind of wasted years, and not having a pick in the 2020 draft when you should have picked third, and that going to Ottawa because of previous trades makes it feel worse, because you could have had a guy like Tim Stützle like in your program already to kind of, but anyway, you still, though, like what Grier has done in such a short amount of time, and then going into this season when you're going to have 2 more first round picks in your pick, and then whatever the Vegas pick that's unprotected. The Sharks have really set themselves up with the best ability to acquire high-end talent, and that is to draft high-end talent. And the best way to draft high-end talent is to have very high picks in the draft, and the Sharks have done that. So still a long way to go with the draft and development model. And now it'll be, how do you add pieces and kind of make sure guys fit the timeline and are getting put in the best position to succeed and for their development. But this forward group, I would put it up with anybody else's prospects forward prospect pool in the NHL right now. I think it is, you have everything. You have everything you need. Maybe another like blue chip player is not going to hurt, and they could potentially get one in next year's draft. But man, landing Celebrini and Will Smith in back-to-back, plus William Eklund and the way his developed, and it just and the way Quentin Musty and Haltonen and like the way they're putting this thing together, there's going to be a lot of exciting times coming in San Jose. So we'll look at some of the areas of need that Mike Grier is going to kind of need to try to figure out, and ways to kind of do that here. So we'll talk about that here in just 1 second. All right, guys, before we continue into that, just want to let you guys know, when you're done checking out this podcast, make sure you guys go check out one of the other great Locked On podcasts. If you want to go check out one of the other Locked On NHL podcasts, or maybe you want to go check out Locked On Giants, Locked On Niners, start getting ready for new season, Locked On A's, Locked On Warriors, whatever it is, we got you covered here at the Locked On NHL Network. So for your second listen of the day, go check out one of the other Bay Area shows. Plenty of good stuff going on in the Bay right now in sports. So let's get into, of course, the areas of kind of need and target. And I think you have to start with the goaltending. I think is the biggest area, kind of glaring hole, right, in the Sharks' goaltending prospect pool. And you can't say it's not without trying. You look at, they drafted Ben Gaudreau, in the third round a couple of years ago. They drafted Mason Beaupet in the fourth round a couple of years ago. Neither one of those guys earning their ELC. Last year, I know in the 2023 draft, like Mike Grier said, we had guys targeted and they just got snaked out before us. And that happens in the draft process, right? I think the Sharks have done a good job. I know Sebastian talked about Magnus Krona, and I think Krona's done okay. I think Georgi Romanoff is maybe a guy I'm a little bit more excited about right now than Krona personally, just because where his story and where he's come from. And I think he's shown higher end flashes last year on the Barracuda than we have seen from Krona. So, and I think those guys are going to be fighting for starts here with the Barracuda, depending on what Mike Grier and Joe Will decide to do if they get another goalie, whatever. But we talked about that earlier this week. If you want to go check out that, I highlighted some names that I would be intrigued by as it's getting very, 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 very quiet in the free agency market right now. But though I think trying to find a goalie, and I know there's a bajillion Sharks fans like anytime it's just Askarov, and like Askarov is really good. Don't get me wrong. Askarov is really, really good. I don't know if he fits. Okay. And not to say like Askarov is going to be NHL ready here, probably another year or so. And I think Askarov is going to be a great goalie at some point, but I don't know if he's a good fit for San Jose and kind of some of the goaltending issues that they've had. Maybe, with Thomas Spears kind of getting more involved and having a bigger say here, hopefully, with the way the Sharks goaltending is. And maybe this can kind of alleviate concerns. But Askarov is a bit of a wild card. And I say this in the best possible way. Like, the dude's a really fun dude, and he's a little out there. And he plays like that too, if you've ever watched him play. And I think the Sharks are probably looking for something a little calmer. And so I know they just drafted two in this round and in this past draft, and you never know with these goalies who's going to hit and where they come from and such. So we'll kind of keep an eye on how these guys do. But I think that is kind of the missing piece, is that like goaltending prospect where you can be like, okay, I can see this guy being a dude here. So, and then I think the other, as our good friend Sebastian said, is another like a right-handed defensive, like kind of first line prospect. And it's really weird. The Sharks have been very kind of left oriented with their kind of puck moving defensemen, and their prospects, right? You look at the Shakir Mukhamadullin, who has been, his game has really grown on me, and I really, really come to like what I've seen out of Mukhamadullin. But left-handed guy, even Jake Wallman, who the Sharks acquired this season. I know he's not a prospect, but right, he's a left-handed kind of puck moving defenseman. Luca Cagnoni, left-handed puck moving defenseman. Maybe they're just a left-handed team. Who knows? But I still think like getting yourself some Sam Dickinson insurance. Not that I think Sam Dickinson is going to be a bust. I've been watching his tape. I'm going to probably really early next week do the Sam Dickinson deep dive episode where we talk about what I've seen from him, kind of what he needs to work on, his projection, all that fun stuff. But getting you look at like the Ducks again. Look at all the defensive guys that they've drafted and developed. And, Jamie Drysdale, who they thought the world of, right? Drafting him, what was he, like 6th overall? No longer with this in the system because things just didn't really work out for him. And they saw an opportunity to trade him for who they think was a better player in Cutter Gauthier, whose stock was at a low, as the Flyers were trying to kind of pawn him off because he didn't want to play for them. And there's more than one way to fill up your prospect pool, right? You see, even the way the Sharks got Shakir Mukhamadullin, who at the Timo Meier trade, right? We were all like, who's this guy, right? And now we're seeing he's going to be NHL ready. He's basically NHL ready now. He's going to be fighting for an NHL job. And whether the Sharks make another trade, you look at like Jack Thompson, who they acquired last year from Anthony Duclair. I think has some upside, is going to be probably on the Barracuda this year and at least to start the season. But like there's more than one way, and I think with Sam Dickinson, as we'll kind of get to, like there's like expecting him to kind of jump in and be an NHL player, in a year is a lot to ask for him. And I know he's very good. He's a big boy. He can skate. But we've seen the way the Sharks have, especially with the defensemen, right? They've taken their time. Like Mukhamadullin could have been playing NHL. If he wasn't hurt last year at the end of the season, he's probably playing more NHL games, but they've been very careful and cautious with the way they develop their defensemen. And I think they're going to continue to do that, especially with what's projected to be a young team for the next couple of seasons. So I think those are the two big areas is getting a goaltending prospect that you feel good is going to be an NHL player here soon. And you can continue to, there's not a ton of those type of guys, right? Where if you have one, you don't want to give one up. And they're really, really hard to find. But I think that's the thing. You can also just kind of keep just signing goalies to 2-year contracts and try to figure things out until you find one, which is the way to go, to be honest, is just keep signing goalies to 2-year contracts and see if you can kind of ride out those 2 years and what happens after that. Then you figure it out. But yeah, finding a goalie. And then I think also whatever, like getting another high-end defensive prospect in the system, whether that's through the draft next year, you're going to have 2 first-round picks, or acquiring one. Maybe you move off of some of your maybe a little bit older prospects, or maybe when you at the trade deadline, when you start trading away some of your NHL players, whether it's Granlund, whether it's Nico Sturm, whomever your pieces that you're going to be looking to move this off season or this during the season, trying to target one of those guys. And I would actually almost rather have one of those guys than a draft pick at this point, because you want these guys to kind of all start to be in the same group and bucket of age, especially for defensemen who take a little bit longer to develop. So, but yeah, overall though, Sharks fans, like This is why you lose all those games. I've said it before. I'll say it a million times, right? That's why you lose all those games, to try to get yourself in the best position. Mike Grier and the Sharks have done that. We have the Celebrini. Like, we're celebrating all summer because of the Sharks' inability to win games. And I'd rather stink now for a couple seasons and then be really good for the next 10 years. And I think we're going to be really good at some point really, really soon. So, but overall, Mike Grier has done an outstanding job at putting together a prospect pool that is rivals almost anybody in the NHL right now. So we'll be back next week. Like I said, we'll do the Sam Dickinson trade, or the Sam Dickinson deep dive. We'll probably start looking at some of the Barracudas off season and kind of dig into what's kind of expected for the Barracuda here. And, kind of start plenty of good stuff. So that's going to be it for me today. I'll be back next week. So make sure you're following wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Till Monday. Bye, friends.